I am Zoe, 34 years old, and I stood in my mother's driveway watching my daughter's throat close up while my own family told me to stop making a scene. Before I tell you about the police cars, the stolen inheritance, and the Porsche that destroyed my family, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I need to know there are sane people out there, because for the last week, I've been living in a nightmare. It started on a Sunday. Sunday dinners were a non-negotiable obligation in the Whitaker household. Even after my messy divorce 6 months ago, my mother, Diane, insisted on maintaining the image of a perfect, cohesive unit. I pulled into the driveway, checking the rearview mirror to make sure Mia, my 9-year-old daughter, looked okay. She had her backpack on her lap, hugging it like a shield. "You got your kit?" I asked. Mia patted the front pocket of her bag. EpiPens, check. Inhaler, check. Sage, check. She scratched behind the ears of the golden retriever sitting next to her. Sage wasn't just a pet. She was a fully trained medical alert service dog. Mia has severe, life-threatening anaphylaxis to peanuts and tree nuts. The kind where cross-contamination can send her to the ER. Sage was trained to sniff out allergens in rooms and food, and more importantly, to alert us if Mia's histamine levels started rising before Mia even felt a symptom. Sage was our security system. We walked into the house. The air smelled of roasted chicken and expensive perfume. My mother, Diane, was in the kitchen, directing my stepfather, Gary, on how to slice lemons properly. My younger sister, Chelsea, was lounging on a bar stool, scrolling on her phone, looking bored. "Shoes off by the door, Zoe," Mom said without looking up. "We just had the carpets deep cleaned." "Hi to you too, Mom," I said, kicking off my sneakers. Mia unclipped Sage's leash but kept the harness on. Sage trotted into the living room, her tail giving a polite wag. "Can I go play with Logan?" Mia asked. Logan is Chelsea's 6-year-old son. "Sure, honey. Just keep Sage with you," I said. Mia ran off toward the playroom. I went into the kitchen to help. The atmosphere was weirdly tense, but that was normal for my family. Chelsea was humming to herself, a little smirk playing on her lips that usually meant she had a secret or she'd just bought something she couldn't afford. 20 minutes later, I was chopping vegetables when I heard it. It wasn't a scream. It was a wheeze. My stomach dropped through the floor. I dropped the knife and sprinted toward the living room. Mia was standing in the hallway, clutching her throat. Her face was that terrifying shade of pale that borders on gray. Her lips were turning blue. "Mia." I slid on the hardwood floor, catching her as her knees buckled. "Can you breathe? Look at me." She shook her head, terror in her eyes. A high-pitched whistling sound came from her chest. "Where's Sage?" I yelled, looking around. "Sage. Alert." Usually, if Mia is even slightly off, Sage is glued to her leg, barking a specific, sharp bark to get my attention. But the hallway was empty. "Sage." I screamed again. "Oh, stop yelling, Zoe," my mother said, walking out of the kitchen with a glass of wine. "You're hurting my ears." "Mom, she's having a reaction." "Where is the dog?" I was already tearing open Mia's backpack. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely work the zipper. I grabbed the EpiPen. "Relax," Chelsea said, leaning against the doorframe. Logan was just sharing a snack with her. "Kids eat, Zoe. You can't bubble wrap her forever." "What did she eat?" I uncapped the EpiPen. "Mia, hold still, baby." I jammed it into her thigh. She didn't even flinch, she was so focused on trying to pull air into her lungs. "Just some crackers," Chelsea shrugged. "Maybe they had peanut butter on them." "Logan loves peanut butter." My blood ran cold. "You gave her peanut butter?" "You know she could die, Chelsea." "God, you're so dramatic," Chelsea rolled her eyes. "It's just a little allergy." Mia was gasping now, the medicine starting to work but not fast enough. Her eyes were rolling back. I needed to get her to the hospital immediately. I scooped her up in my arms, she felt terrifyingly light, and turned to the door. "Where is the dog?" I demanded again. "We need to go." "Sage." Silence. I looked at the corner where Sage's travel bed usually sat. Gone. The water bowl I had put down 10 minutes ago? Gone. "Mom, where is Sage?" Diane stepped in front of the front door, blocking my path. Her face was hard, her jaw set. "You are not taking her out that door in this state. You're embarrassing the family, Zoe. Look at you, hysterical. She can't breathe." I screamed, shifting Mia's weight. "Move. We are not having an ambulance flashing lights in my driveway," Diane hissed. "The neighbors will talk." "Put her down on the couch. It's just a tantrum." "A tantrum doesn't turn a kid blue, Diane." "Move or I will physically move you," I said, my voice dropping to a growl I didn't recognize. "Gary!" Mom yelled. "Control your stepdaughter." Gary stood uselessly by the stairs, looking at his shoes. Maybe she should go to the ER, Diane." "No." Diane snapped. "She just needs to calm down." I didn't wait. I rammed my shoulder into my mother, hard. She stumbled back, gasping like I'd shot her. "You assaulted me," she shrieked. I kicked the front door open. The fresh air hit my face, but I didn't stop. I ran to my car, fumbling for my keys. I got the back door open and buckled Mia in. She was crying now, soft, wheezing sobs. "It's okay, baby, I've got you," I promised, my tears blurring my vision. I ran around to the driver's seat. As I grabbed the handle, I looked back at the house. My mother was standing in the doorway, fixing her blouse, her face twisted in anger. Chelsea was behind her, checking her nails. And then I saw it. Taped to the glass of the storm door was a brand new, laminated sign. I had missed it when we walked in because the door was open. "House rules, no pets inside. Absolutely no exceptions." My brain did a stutter step. No pets? Sage had been coming here for 2 years. Sage was medical equipment, not a pet. I jumped in the car and peeled out of the driveway. I called 911 on speaker as I drove, running the stop sign at the end of the block. 911, what is your emergency? My daughter is in anaphylactic shock. I administered 1 EpiPen. We are en route to St. Mary's. Is she conscious? Barely. I reached back to squeeze Mia's leg. Stay with me, Mia. Stay with me. The drive was a blur of horn honking and terrifying silence from the back seat. When we hit the ER bay, nurses were already waiting. They swarmed the car. Does she have any other conditions? A male nurse asked as they lifted her onto a gurney. No. Just the allergy. Where is her service animal? He asked, looking around. Usually alerts come in with the patient. I froze. Standing there on the asphalt, with the smell of exhaust and antiseptic filling my nose, the reality hit me like a physical punch to the gut. They didn't just hide the dog. They didn't just lock Sage in a bedroom. The bed was gone. The bowl was gone. The sign was new. My mother and sister hadn't just ignored my daughter's safety. They had engineered this. They had removed the one thing that kept Mia safe, and then they had fed her poison. I don't know, I whispered, my voice cracking. I don't know where the dog is. The nurse gave me a sympathetic look and rushed Mia through the double doors. I stood there alone, my hands shaking uncontrollably, realizing that the people who were supposed to love us most had just tried to kill my daughter. But I didn't know the half of it yet. The waiting room of the ER is a special kind of purgatory. It smells of floor wax and old coffee, and the clock on the wall ticks loud enough to drive you insane. I sat there for 2 hours, staring at my phone. I had 12 missed calls from Mom and 4 from Chelsea. I didn't answer a single one. Finally, the doctor came out. Dr. Thorne. He looked tired but kind. She's stable, he said. The air rushed out of my lungs in a sob. It was a severe reaction, Zoe. If you hadn't administered that EpiPen and got her here when you did, well, we'd be having a very different conversation. I nodded, wiping my face with my sleeve. Can I see her? She's drowsy from the meds, but yes. She's asking for you. And the dog. My heart broke all over again. I walked into the room. Mia looked tiny in the hospital bed, wires taped to her chest, and 4 in her small hand. Her eyes were puffy, but she was awake. I sat on the edge of the bed and brushed the hair off her forehead. Hi, brave girl. Mom, her voice was raspy. Did Sage get in trouble? I frowned. What? No, honey. Why would Sage get in trouble? Mia picked at the hospital blanket. Because Aunt Chelsea said Sage was bad. She said Sage was messy and shed too much hair. I stiffened. When did she say that? When I was playing with Logan. Before the crackers. Mia looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. Aunt Chelsea took Sage's leash. She said she was taking Sage to a better home. A cleaner home. The room spun. A better home. Did she say where, baby? Mia shook her head. She just said I could FaceTime Sage if I was a good girl and didn't complain. Rage is a funny thing. Usually, it feels hot, like fire. But this rage was cold. It was ice in my veins. They stole her. They stole a medical service animal from a child they knew could die without her. I stayed with Mia until she fell asleep. I called my ex-husband, Mark, but of course, it went to voicemail. He was on a spiritual retreat in Bali, which was code for spending his inheritance on surfing and ignoring his responsibilities. I was alone in this. The next morning, I discharged Mia. I didn't take her home. I dropped her off at her best friend's house, thanking the mom profusely and promising to be back in 2 hours. I needed Mia safe because I was about to go to war. I drove straight to my mother's house. It was 10 a.m. on a Monday. My mother's driveway usually had her sedan and Gary's truck. But today, there was something else blocking the garage. A car. But not just any car. It was a brand new, pearl-white Porsche Cayenne. It gleamed in the sunlight, looking like a diamond sitting in the middle of a dirty sidewalk. It still had the dealer plates on it. I parked my beat-up Honda Civic on the street and walked up the driveway. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was razor-sharp. The front door opened before I even knocked. Diane stood there, holding a mug of tea, looking annoyingly calm. Chelsea was behind her, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. You're alive, Diane said, sipping her tea. We were worried. You ran off like a maniac yesterday. Where is the dog? I asked. My voice was low, steady. Oh, don't start with that again, Chelsea groaned. She pushed past Mom and walked out onto the driveway, heading toward the Porsche. She ran her hand along the hood, looking at it like it was a lover. Isn't she beautiful? Logan and I are going to have so much fun in this. I stared at the car. Then I looked at Chelsea. Then at my mother. It clicked. The math was sickeningly simple. Service dogs like Sage are expensive. With training, certification, and breeding, Sage was worth upwards of $40,000. My grandmother, Nana June, had paid for Sage 2 years ago when Mia was diagnosed. You sold her, I whispered. Chelsea laughed, opening the driver's door to inspect the leather seats. Don't be crass, Zoe. We rehomed her. We found a placement that actually appreciates the breed. You sold my daughter's medical equipment to buy a car, I said, my voice rising. It's not just a car, Chelsea snapped, turning on me. It's reliability. It's status. The kids deserve to be driven around in something safe, not that junk heap you drive. And honestly? We did you a favor. That dog was a crutch. Mia needs to learn to manage her own health without relying on an animal. It's pathetic. She is 9. I screamed. She almost died yesterday. Because you panicked, Diane interjected smoothly. If you were a more competent mother, you would have checked the snacks. Don't blame your sister for your negligence. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me, and I realized I didn't know her at all. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting the golden child, Chelsea, just like she always had. I'm calling the police, I said, reaching for my phone. That dog is stolen property. Diane's face didn't change. She just sighed, like I was a toddler refusing to eat peas. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. You can do that, she said. But then I'll have to give this to social services. I froze. What is that? A petition for emergency temporary custody, Diane said, smoothing the paper. Listing yesterday's incident as evidence of your instability. Rushing a child out of a safe home, refusing to listen to family, driving erratically, plus your financial situation since the divorce. You can't even afford rent, Zoe. How are you going to afford a lawyer? My blood ran cold. You wouldn't. I would, Diane smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. I'm worried about Mia. She needs a stable home. A home with resources. Unless what? I gritted my teeth. Unless you sign this, she held out another paper. Voluntary temporary guardianship. You let Mia stay here with us for 6 months. You get your life together. We handle her medical care, properly, without the dog hair. And you don't call the police. I looked at the Porsche. I looked at Chelsea, smirking in the driver's seat. I looked at my mother, holding my daughter's freedom hostage. They had planned this. Every second of it. I'm not signing anything, I said, backing away. Then prepare for court, sweetie, Diane called after me. And say goodbye to Mia. No judge is going to give a broke, hysterical divorcee custody over a stable, wealthy grandmother. I got into my car and locked the doors. I drove 2 blocks and pulled over, shaking so hard I couldn't breathe. She was right. I had no money. My ex-husband had drained our accounts. I was living paycheck to paycheck. A lawyer would cost thousands I didn't have. But they forgot one thing. They forgot who paid for the dog. I wiped my face, put the car in gear, and turned toward the retirement community on the other side of town. I was going to see Nana June. Nana June lived in the Oaks, a retirement community that looked more like a 5-star resort than a place for old people. Manicured hedges, silent streets, and security guards who looked like they used to be Secret Service. I pulled up to her townhouse. Nana June was 85, but she was sharp as a tack. She was the one who built the family wealth, the one who started the real estate business that my father had run and that my mother, Diane, was currently draining dry. I let myself in with the spare key. Nana? She was in her sunroom, reading the Wall Street Journal with a magnifying glass. She looked up, her blue eyes piercing. You look like hell, Zoe, she said. She didn't do small talk. I collapsed onto the floral sofa opposite her. They took Sage. Mom and Chelsea. They sold her. Nana June didn't gasp. She didn't clutch her pearls. She just slowly folded the newspaper and placed it on the table. I know, she said. I blinked. You know? Diane called me last night, Nana June said, her voice dry. She was bragging. Said she finally fixed the Mia problem and helped Chelsea get reliable transportation in the same stroke. She thought I'd be pleased she was showing initiative. My stomach turned. Nana, Mia ended up in the ER. They fed her peanuts. For the first time, Nana June's expression cracked. Her lips thinned into a white line. Diane didn't mention that part. They're threatening to take Mia, I said, the tears finally spilling over. Mom says I'm unstable. She says I can't afford a lawyer. Nana, I don't know what to do. That dog. Sage was everything. Nana June stood up. She walked over to a heavy oak cabinet in the corner of the room. She spun the dial on a safe and pulled out a thick leather binder. Zoe, stop crying. It ruins your makeup and solves nothing, she commanded. She dropped the binder on the coffee table. It made a heavy thud. What is this? This, she tapped the cover, is the Mia Heart Benefit Trust. I frowned. I thought you just paid for things. I didn't know there was a formal trust. I don't hand out cash, Zoe. I invest. Nana June opened the binder. When Mia was diagnosed, I set up this trust to cover her medical needs, her college fund, and her support systems. That includes the dog. She flipped to a page with a red tab. Read paragraph 4. I leaned in. Asset designation, the canine known as Sage, microchip ID hashtag ending in 9928, is the sole property of the trust. Any transfer, sale, or rehoming of said asset without the express written consent of the trustee, June Patterson, constitutes felony theft and embezzlement. I looked up, hope blooming in my chest. Wait. So Diane didn't have the right to sell her? Diane doesn't have the right to sell a used napkin if it belongs to this trust, Nana June said. She thinks Sage is just a pet. She thinks she's the head of this family because I let her play house. She's about to learn she's wrong. Nana June picked up her landline phone. She didn't dial 911. She dialed a number from memory. Andrew? It's June. Clear your afternoon. We have a breach of trust. And Andrew? Bring the shark suit. Andrew Keller arrived 40 minutes later. I had expected some stuffy old man, but Andrew was in his late 30s, wearing a suit that cost more than Chelsea's new Porsche. He had the eyes of a predator and the smile of a politician. He listened to my story without interrupting. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I got to the part about the custody threat, his pen stopped. She filed for emergency custody? Andrew asked. She said she was going to. And she wants you to sign a voluntary guardianship. Andrew tapped his pen. Classic narcissist move. Create the crisis, then offer to solve it in exchange for total control. Can we get the dog back? I asked. We can, Andrew said. But we have a bigger problem. June, did you sign a power of attorney update last month? Nana June frowned. No. I haven't updated my estate plan in 5 years. Andrew pulled a document from his briefcase. I pulled the county records on my way over when you mentioned Diane was making moves. This was filed 2 weeks ago. It gives Diane full medical and financial power of attorney over you, June, effective immediately upon incapacity. Nana June grabbed the paper. She stared at the signature at the bottom. That is a forgery, she said, her voice quiet and dangerous. It looks like my signature, but the loop on the J is wrong. I haven't signed like that since the stroke in '98. She's setting the board, Andrew said, looking at me. Zoe, she wants custody of Mia not just to control you. If she has Mia, she has a claim to the trust funds allocated for Mia's care. And if she declares June incompetent using this forged POA, she controls the rest of the fortune. My mouth fell open. It's about the money. It's always been about the inheritance. The Porsche wasn't just a car, I realized. It was a down payment on the life she thinks she's about to get. Andrew stood up. Okay. Here is the plan. Step 1, we secure the child. Step 2, we recover the asset, the dog. Step 3, We destroy Diane's legal standing before she knows we're coming. I like step 3, Nana June said, closing the binder. Zoe, Andrew looked at me. Go pick up Mia from your friend's house. Do not take her back to your apartment. It's not secure if Diane has a key. Stay here tonight. Okay, I said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. And Zoe? Andrew's voice was serious. Don't answer your phone. If Diane calls, let it ring. She is not your mother right now. She is the opposition. I nodded. I felt stronger than I had in months. I had Nana June. I had Andrew. We had the law on our side. But we underestimated how desperate Diane was. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from the school secretary, Mrs. Higgins. Zoe, your mother is here. She says she's picking up Mia early for a dentist appointment. She's yelling at the staff. I looked at the clock. It was 1 p.m. I thought Mia was still at her friend's house, but I had forgotten, her friend's mom had dropped them at school for the afternoon assembly. She's at the school, I gasped. She's trying to take Mia. The drive to the elementary school usually took 15 minutes. I made it in 7. Andrew was in the passenger seat, on the phone with the police, instructing them to meet us there. Nana June stayed behind. She was too angry to be in public, she said, but I think she was protecting the trust documents. I screeched into the school parking lot. Diane's sedan was parked in the fire lane, engine running. I sprinted into the main office. The scene was chaotic. The secretary, Mrs. Higgins, a woman who had survived 3 principals and 20 years of cafeteria food, was standing behind the counter with her arms crossed. Diane was leaning over the desk, her face red. I am her grandmother. Diane was shouting. I have picked her up 1,000 times. And as I said, Mrs. Whitaker, Mrs. Higgins said calmly, Zoe removed you from the authorized pickup list this morning via the online portal. I had done that from the hospital waiting room. Thank God for paranoia. Mom. I yelled. Diane spun around. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. Then she saw Andrew walking in behind me, looking like he owned the building. Zoe, Diane's voice switched instantly from screaming to sugary sweet. Thank goodness you're here. There's been a misunderstanding. I just wanted to take Mia for ice cream to make up for yesterday. Stay away from my daughter, I walked up to her, putting myself between her and the door to the classrooms. Who is this? Diane looked at Andrew. Andrew Keller, he said smoothly. I represent Mrs. June Patterson and, by extension, the Mia Hart Trust. You need to leave the premises, Diane. Diane laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. You hired a lawyer? With what money, Zoe? Did you sell your kidney? Leave, I said. Or Andrew calls the cops. The police are already en route regarding a disturbance, Andrew checked his watch. Diane's face fell. She smoothed her skirt, regained her composure, and picked up her purse. Fine. Keep her. But remember, Zoe, courts look very closely at mothers who alienate loving grandparents. You're digging your own grave. She walked out, head held high. I slumped against the counter. Is Mia okay? She's in the nurse's office, Mrs. Higgins said. She's shaken up, but safe. I went to get Mia. She was sitting on a cot, swinging her legs. When she saw me, she burst into tears. Grandma was yelling, she sobbed. I know, baby. We're going to go to Nana June's house, okay? It's a sleepover. We drove back to the Oaks. The whole way, I had a bad feeling. Diane had given up too easily. She wasn't the type to retreat unless she had a better angle of attack. When we pulled up to Nana June's townhouse, the front door was wide open. Stay in the car, I told Mia and Andrew. I ran inside. Nana? The sunroom was empty. The safe was closed. The binder was gone. The coffee cup Nana had been drinking from was spilled on the rug. "Andrew!" I screamed. He came running in. We searched the house. No Nana June. My phone rang. It was Gary, my stepdad. I put it on speaker. "Where is she, Gary?" "Zoe," Gary's voice sounded shaky. We had to make a tough decision. Your mother," she was very concerned about June's mental state. June was talking about conspiracies, about trusts, she was agitated. "Where is she?" I screamed. "We checked her into Serenity Hills," Gary said. "The memory care unit. It's for her own safety, Zoe." She was confused. She didn't know where she was. She was reading the Wall Street Journal an hour ago. I yelled. "You kidnapped her." "It's a secure facility," Gary said. "No visitors for 72 hours. Doctor's orders. We just want everyone to calm down." Click. He hung up. I dropped the phone. Serenity Hills. It was a lockdown facility for severe dementia patients. Once you were in, you couldn't check yourself out. You needed a guardian. And thanks to the forged power of attorney, Diane was that guardian. "They locked her away," I whispered. "To stop her from testifying." My vision tunneled. It wasn't negligence. It wasn't an accident. Chelsea had weaponized her own 6-year-old son to poison my daughter, just to prove a point. Just to prove that I was overprotective. And now they had my grandmother locked in a cell and my dog sold to a stranger. Something inside me snapped. The fear evaporated. The sadness evaporated. All that was left was a cold, hard need for destruction. "Andrew," I said, standing up. "Get the judge. Get the police. We're not just getting Nana out. We're burning their whole kingdom down." "Where are you going?" Andrew asked, seeing the look on my face. "I'm going to find my dog," I said. "And I know exactly how to do it." Finding the dog wasn't hard. Narcissists have a fatal flaw, they need an audience. I pulled up Instagram. Chelsea blocked me years ago, but she didn't block Andrew. We sat in Nana June's kitchen, which felt empty and cold without her, and scrolled through Chelsea's feed. And there it was. Posted 20 minutes ago. A story update. So blessed. New car, new vibes. Come celebrate with us tonight. Barbecue and bubbly. Hashtag Porsche Life, hashtag Kian, hashtag blessed. In the background of the video, past Chelsea's manicured hand holding a glass of champagne, was the backyard. And tied to the leg of the patio table, looking miserable and confused, was Sage. "She kept the dog," I said, pointing at the screen. "She didn't sell her to a stranger. She kept her." "Why would she do that?" Andrew asked. "It's incriminating." "Because Chelsea is lazy," I said. "She probably found a buyer but hasn't shipped her yet. Or maybe she thinks a golden retriever looks good next to the Porsche. It's an accessory." Andrew stood up. "I just got the emergency writ from Judge Harris. The police are meeting us at Serenity Hills to extract June. Then, we go to the party." The extraction of Nana June was swift and brutal. We met Officer Miller at the facility. When the administrator tried to wave the power of attorney in our faces, Andrew slapped down the court order proving the POA was contested and likely fraudulent. They brought Nana June out. She wasn't wearing her signature pearls. She was wearing a hospital gown over her clothes, and she looked furious. "It took you long enough," she snapped at Andrew as she walked out the sliding doors. "The jello in there is a crime against humanity." "Are you okay, Nana?" I hugged her. She felt frail, but her grip was strong. "I am angry, Zoe. There is a difference." She looked at the police officer. "Officer, I would like to report a theft. And a kidnapping. And I believe my granddaughter is holding a party on my dime right now." We're going there now, ma'am, Officer Miller said. We rolled up to my mother's house in a convoy. My Honda, Andrew's BMW, and 2 squad cars. The party was in full swing. String lights were twinkling in the twilight. Music was playing. I could see neighbors and friends, people I had grown up with, holding drinks and admiring the white Porsche parked prominently in the driveway. We parked. The music didn't stop, but the conversation did. People turned to look as the police stepped out. I got out first. I walked straight past the Porsche, up the driveway. Mom! Chelsea yelled, spotting me. She's here to ruin it. I told you. Diane came rushing out of the house, a fake smile plastered on her face, trying to intercept the police. Officers? Is there a problem? My daughter is having a bit of a mental health crisis. We've been trying to help her. Then Nana June stepped out of Andrew's car. The color drained from Diane's face so fast she looked like a corpse. Mother? Diane whispered. You should be resting. And you should be in handcuffs, Nana June said, her voice carrying across the silent yard. Officer, that vehicle, she pointed her cane at the Porsche, was purchased with proceeds from the theft of trust property. Seize it. Wait. Chelsea screamed, running over to the car as if she could physically block the police. This is my car. It's in my name. And the dog? I asked, walking toward the backyard. You can't go back there. Diane grabbed my arm. I ripped my arm away. Don't touch me. I walked into the backyard. There she was. Sage. She was tied to the table with a piece of rope, not her leash. She was panting, no water bowl in sight. Sage. I called. Her ears perked up. She let out a bark and pulled against the rope. I ran to her, untying the knot with trembling fingers. As soon as she was free, she jumped on me, licking my face, whining. I buried my face in her fur, smelling the familiar scent of dog shampoo and safety. I've got you, I whispered. I've got you. I walked Sage back to the front yard. The party guests were watching in horrified silence. The illusion of the perfect Whitaker family was shattering in real time. Andrew was handing Diane a stack of papers. Diane Whitaker, you are served. Emergency revocation of POA. Restraining order for Zoe and Mia. And a notice of intent to sue for misappropriation of funds. This is ridiculous, Diane hissed, looking around at her neighbors. It's a family misunderstanding. My mother is confused. I am not confused. Nana June stepped closer to Diane. I know exactly what you did. You forged my name. You locked me away. And you let your daughter poison my great-granddaughter. The crowd gasped. Poison? Gary spoke up from the back, holding a spatula. What poison? The peanut butter, I said, looking straight at Chelsea. Chelsea crossed her arms, leaning against her Porsche. It was an accident. Logan didn't know. Mia told us, I said loudly. She told us what you whispered to Logan. Let's see if she's a faker. You told him to do it, Chelsea. Chelsea's mouth opened and closed. She looked at the neighbors staring at her with disgust. She looked at Diane for help. Mom, tell them. Chelsea whined. Diane stepped back. The survival instinct of a narcissist is a powerful thing. When the ship sinks, they don't go down with it. They use their children as life rafts. I had no idea, Diane said, her voice trembling with fake shock. Chelsea, how could you? I told you to be careful with the snacks. Chelsea's eyes went wide. What? You told me to get rid of the dog. You said the dog was the problem. I never said to hurt the child. Diane shouted. Ladies, Officer Miller stepped in. Save it for the judge. Chelsea Whitaker, step away from the vehicle. We're impounding it as evidence in a theft investigation. No. Chelsea shrieked as the tow truck, which Andrew had efficiently summoned, backed into the driveway. I stood there, holding Sage's leash, watching my sister scream while my mother tried to charm the police officer and my stepfather wept by the grill. It was a tragedy. It was a circus. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one cleaning up the mess. "Let's go home, Zoe," Nana June said, turning her back on her daughter. "I believe we have a sleepover to attend." We drove away as the tow truck hooked up the Porsche. In the rearview mirror, I saw the flashing lights of the police cars illuminating my mother's furious, defeated face. The fallout was swift, messy, and absolute. We stayed at Nana June's house that night. We ordered pizza. Mia slept in the middle of Nana's king-sized bed, with Sage curled up at her feet. For the first time in days, I slept without waking up in a cold sweat. The next morning, the legal machinery that Andrew had set in motion began to crush my mother and sister. The judge granted the permanent restraining order. Diane was barred from coming within 500 feet of Mia, me, or Nana June. The Porsche was gone. It turned out Chelsea hadn't even bought it outright. She had leased it using a substantial down payment from the sale of Sage, which was actually a transfer fee she pocketed from a shady breeder who thought he was buying a breeding dog. When the police seized the dog back, the breeder demanded his money back. Chelsea, of course, had already spent it on the lease initiation and a celebratory shopping spree. She was facing fraud charges. The car was repossessed by the dealership due to the criminal investigation invalidating the contract. But the real blow came for Diane. Nana June didn't just revoke the POA. She audited the books. It turned out Diane had been siphoning money from Nana's accounts for years to fund Chelsea's lifestyle and cover Gary's bad investments. It wasn't just the dog. The dog was just the tip of the iceberg. "She's going to lose the house," Andrew told us a week later, sitting at Nana's kitchen table. Diane took out a second mortgage to pay back the funds she borrowed to avoid jail time for embezzlement. If she misses a payment, the bank forecloses. "Good," Nana June said, sipping her tea. She looked 10 years younger now that she was back in control. I looked at Mia. She was in the garden, throwing a ball for Sage. She was laughing. She wasn't wheezing. She wasn't scared. I realized then that I had spent my whole life afraid of my mother. Afraid of her judgment, her anger, her ability to twist reality. But she wasn't a monster under the bed. She was just a sad, greedy woman who had overplayed her hand. I walked outside and sat on the grass next to Mia. "Mom," Mia said, breathless. "Sage is really happy." "I know, baby." "Is Grandma mad?" Mia asked, her smile fading a little. I pulled her into my lap. "Grandma is facing the consequences of her actions. And that's not your fault." "It's never your fault." Mia nodded. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a drawing. "I made this for Nana," she said. It was a picture of a house. In the window were 4 stick figures, me, Mia, Nana June, and Sage. There was a big sun in the sky. There was no Porsche. There was no Grandma Diane. "It's perfect," I said, kissing the top of her head. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank app. Deposit received, $50,000 reference, consulting fee. I frowned and looked at Nana June through the window. She winked and raised her teacup. She had hired me as the manager of her estate, giving me a salary that meant I never had to worry about rent, or my mother's threats, ever again. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and freedom. The silence that followed the raid on my mother's house was heavy, but for the first time in my life, it didn't feel threatening. It felt like a fortress. For the next 3 weeks, Nana June, Mia, and I lived in a bubble of peace at the Oaks. We established a new routine. I would wake up, make coffee in Nana's sun-drenched kitchen, and watch Mia practice her breathing exercises with Sage. The trauma of the anaphylactic shock was fading physically, but the psychological scars were still there. Mia wouldn't eat anything unless I prepared it, and she wouldn't go into a room unless Sage entered first to clear it. But while our home life was quiet, the legal war Andrew Keller was waging outside our walls was deafening. The court date for the permanent custody hearing and the fraud charges arrived on a Tuesday. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening rain, matching the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Even though we had the evidence, the police reports, the forged medical documents, the witness statements regarding the peanut butter, I was terrified. I had spent 34 years being gaslit by Diane Whittaker. Part of me still believed she could talk her way out of a felony. "You look like you're going to a funeral, Zoe," Nana June said as I walked into the living room. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, her pearls back around her neck where they belonged. "In a way, I am," I said, smoothing my skirt. "I'm going to bury the idea that I ever had a mother." Andrew picked us up in his sedan. He was unusually quiet on the drive to the courthouse. "What is it?" I asked, sensing the shift in his mood. "Is there a problem with the case?" "Not a problem," Andrew said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "A discovery. We subpoenaed your stepfather's financial records to support the elder abuse claim. We found out why they were so desperate for the money. It wasn't just Chelsea's lifestyle." "What was it?" "Gary," Andrew said. "He's been day trading. Badly. And he's been borrowing from loan sharks to cover the margins. They weren't just trying to steal from the trust to buy a Porsche, Zoe. They were trying to stop your mother's kneecaps from being broken. The Porsche was a lease, a prop to make them look solvent to the lenders while they tried to liquidate Nana's assets." I stared out the window. My stepfather, the quiet man who stood by the grill and wept, had gambled away their security. And my mother had decided that selling my daughter's safety was the only way to fix it. We entered the courtroom. Diane and Gary were already there. They looked like husks of the people they had been at the party. Gary was gray-faced, his hands shaking violently on the table. Diane was trying to maintain her composure, wearing a modest cardigan and a cross necklace I had never seen her wear before. Chelsea was absent. Andrew told me her own lawyer had advised her to stay far away from her mother to avoid conspiracy charges, though it was likely too late for that. The proceedings were brutal. Diane's lawyer, a court-appointed defender because they could no longer afford their private firm, tried to paint the narrative of a misunderstanding. He argued that Diane was a concerned grandmother who acted in haste to protect a fragile child from an overwhelmed mother. Then, Andrew stood up. He didn't yell. He didn't pace. He simply laid out the timeline. He played the recording of the 911 call where I was screaming that they had hidden the dog. He presented the affidavit from the ER doctor confirming the severity of the reaction and the presence of peanut residue. He showed the no pets sign. He showed the Instagram post of the Porsche with Sage tied in the background. But the nail in the coffin was the trust document. "Your Honor," Andrew said, holding up the binder. "This wasn't a family dispute over a pet. This was a calculated liquidation of a protected asset belonging to a medical trust." "And the motive?" Andrew projected a spreadsheet onto the court monitor. It was a list of Gary's debts, totaling over $400,000. They needed access to the Mia Hart Benefit Trust, Andrew explained. But they couldn't touch the principal unless June Patterson was declared incompetent and Zoe Hart was declared an unfit mother. If they achieved those two things, Diane Whittaker would become the trustee. They didn't care if Mia stopped breathing. In fact, Mia's medical crisis was the perfect pretext to claim Zoe was incompetent. I looked at my mother. For the first time, she didn't look back with defiance. She looked at the table. She knew it was over. When the judge asked Diane if she had anything to say, she stood up. I expected her to cry. I expected her to beg. Instead, she looked at me, her eyes cold and hard. "I did what I had to do to save this family," she said, her voice steady. "You were always ungrateful, Zoe. You have no idea what it costs to maintain a legacy." The judge, a stern woman with glasses on the end of her nose, was unimpressed. Mrs. Whitaker, the judge said, you didn't maintain a legacy. You cannibalized it. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. The ruling was total. Permanent custody to me. A lifetime restraining order against Diane, Gary, and Chelsea for both Mia and Nana June. The immediate repayment of all misappropriated funds to the trust. And, because of the severity of the medical neglect and the forgery, the judge referred the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. As we walked out of the courtroom, a bailiff moved to handcuff Diane. The fraud charges regarding Nana's accounts had been fast-tracked. Zoe! Diane screamed as the metal cuffs clicked. Zoe, tell them. I'm your mother. You can't let them take me. I stopped. I turned around. You're not my mother, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. You're just the woman who sold my daughter's life for a Porsche. I walked out the double doors and into the sunlight. Mia was waiting on a bench with a court-appointed social worker and Sage. When she saw me, she jumped up. Sage let out a happy bark. Did we win? Mia asked. I knelt down and hugged her, burying my face in her neck. Yeah, baby. We won. They can't ever hurt us again. But the victory wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the days that followed. The fallout for the rest of the family was catastrophic. With Diane in jail awaiting trial and the assets frozen, the house of cards collapsed. The bank foreclosed on my childhood home. Gary, unable to pay his debts and facing prison time for the forgery, suffered a massive heart attack 3 days after the trial. He survived, but he was a broken man, living in a state-run facility. Chelsea was the one who surprised me. Without her mother to shield her and without the money to fuel her delusions, she crumbled. She pleaded guilty to animal cruelty and theft to avoid jail time, receiving 3 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. I saw a picture of her in the local paper a few weeks later. She was picking up trash on the side of the highway in an orange vest. She looked miserable. She looked angry. But mostly, she looked ordinary. The golden child shine was gone, scrubbed away by the harsh reality of consequences. Nana June and I sat on her porch one evening, watching the sunset. Sage was chasing fireflies in the yard. You know, Nana June said, nursing a glass of iced tea. I blamed myself for a long time. I wondered if I raised Diane to be that way. If I gave her too much. You didn't make her evil, Nana, I said. She made her choices. Just like I'm making mine. You are, Nana smiled. And speaking of choices, Andrew called. He says the trust recovery is going better than expected. We managed to claw back the down payment on the Porsche. I laughed. It felt good to laugh. What are we going to do with it? Well, Nana June's eyes twinkled. I was thinking Sage deserves a vacation. And Mia needs to see that the world is bigger than this town and her allergies. How does Italy sound? Italy? I looked at her. The air is good there, Nana said. And the pasta is better. We're going to celebrate, Zoe. We're going to live. And for the first time in forever, I didn't worry about the cost. I didn't worry about permission. I just looked at my daughter and her dog, and I nodded. Italy sounds perfect. 6 months later. The villa in Tuscany was older than my entire country, with stone walls that smelled of rosemary and sun-baked earth. Mia was sitting at a long wooden table under a pergola, drawing. Sage was asleep under the table, enjoying the cool shade of the terracotta tiles. I stood on the balcony, holding a glass of wine, looking out over the rolling hills. My phone buzzed on the table. It was an email from the prison system. A notification that an inmate had requested contact. Diane Whitaker. I stared at the name. 6 months ago, seeing that name would have sent me into a panic attack. My heart would have raced, my hands would have shaken, and I would have felt that familiar, crushing weight of obligation and fear. But today? Nothing. I felt indifferent. I didn't open the email. I didn't delete it. I just swiped it into a folder labeled legal and locked the screen. She didn't get to interrupt my Tuscan afternoon. She didn't get to occupy space in my head anymore. Mom. Mia called out. Come look. Sage is dreaming. I walked over to the table. Sage's paws were twitching, and she let out a little woof in her sleep. Mia giggled. Do you think she's chasing squirrels? Mia asked. I think she's chasing Porsches, I joked. Mia laughed, a full, belly laugh that didn't end in a wheeze. Mia had changed. She was no longer the frightened little girl who hugged her backpack like a shield. She was 10 years old now. She carried her EpiPens with confidence, not fear. She advocated for herself at restaurants in broken Italian, asking about nosai, nuts, with a seriousness that charmed every waiter. She was healing. We all were. Nana June walked out onto the terrace, leaning on her cane but moving with purpose. She placed a stack of letters on the table. Updates from Andrew, she said. The foreclosure on your mother's house is final. The property is being auctioned next week. Does it bother you? I asked. That was your house first. A house is just wood and stone, Zoe. Nana June sat down. A home is where you are safe. That place ceased to be a home a long time ago. Let it go. Let someone else build something good on that land. She was right. The physical structures of my past were crumbling, but the foundation we were building now was indestructible. I had taken over the full management of the trust. It wasn't just about protecting money anymore. I was using a portion of the funds to start a non-profit organization dedicated to providing service dogs for low-income families with medical needs. We named it the Sage Initiative. It was my way of turning the ugliest moment of my life into something beautiful. Every time we handed a leash to a scared kid and saw their parents' shoulders drop with relief, I felt a little more of the anger chip away. You know, I said, looking at Mia and Nana. I used to think family was the most important thing in the world. That you had to stick by them, no matter what. That blood was thicker than water. The full quote, Nana June corrected, is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the bonds you choose are stronger than the ones you inherit. I looked at Sage. I looked at Nana June, who had chosen to protect me over her own daughter. I looked at Mia, who I chose to fight for every single day. You're right, I said. We chose this. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Later that evening, after Mia had gone to sleep, I sat by the fireplace with Sage. I thought about the woman I was 6 months ago, standing in a driveway, screaming, powerless, broke. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her it was going to be okay. But I realized she needed to go through that fire. She needed to be burned so she could stop being soft and start being steel. My mother tried to use my daughter as leverage. She thought my love for Mia was a weakness she could exploit. She thought my financial dependence was a leash she could pull. She was wrong. My love for Mia wasn't a weakness. It was the fuel. It was the weapon. And once I realized that I didn't need their money, their approval, or their version of family, I became untouchable. I patted Sage's head. She opened one eye, looked at me, and let out a contented sigh. Good girl, I whispered. We were safe. We were free. And for the first time in my life, the future didn't look like a threat. It looked like an open road. This brings us to the end of my journey. If you've stuck with me this far, through the hospital visits, the legal battles, and the Tuscan sunsets, thank you. But before you click away, I want you to really think about what happened here. This story wasn't just about a dog or a car. It was about the danger of compliance. For years, I let my family mistreat me because I was afraid of rocking the boat. I was afraid of being difficult. I thought that if I was just nice enough, quiet enough, and helpful enough, they would eventually treat me with respect. I was wrong. Toxic people do not change because you are nice to them. They change their tactics to exploit your niceness. I learned 3 hard lessons that I want you to take with you. Trust your gut, not your lineage. Just because someone shares your DNA doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. If something feels wrong, like a missing dog bowl or a whisper to a child, listen to that instinct. It is your survival mechanism. Financial independence is freedom. My mother controlled me because she thought I had nowhere else to go. The moment I gained control of my own resources, thanks to Nana June, her power evaporated. Never let anyone hold your livelihood hostage. Protect the vulnerable at all costs. My mother and sister viewed Mia and Sage as objects to be moved, sold, or used. Real love is protection. If you are the only thing standing between a child, or an animal, and a predator, you do not move. You do not negotiate. You fight. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut off a family member to protect your peace? Or maybe you've had to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves? Leave a comment below with the word good if you agree that boundaries are necessary, or share your own moment of truth when you realized you had to walk away. Your stories help me. They remind me that I'm not the only one who had to burn a bridge to light the way home. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. Until next time, stay safe, hold your loved ones close, and never, ever apologize for protecting your peace.